this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Ilya Malinin. Redefining the sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Moore. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. How many times have you heard people say that? And it can be used for any number of various things that you might be considering doing in life, or people that you're exposed to and they give you information. But you know that term never really existed, at least I don't think that it existed, prior to a very specific event that occurred down in South America in the late 70s involving a man named Jim Jones. Now, how did he get connected with that term? Well, he led a cult. And as part of this cult, he decided that the world was coming to an end and that he was going to take all of his fellow members with him into the great beyond. And how did he do that? He used Kool-Aid laced with cyanide. Today, we're going to explore a couple of cases here, actually a total of six people that in one moment, their lives ended in a hotel room in Thailand. And yes, this involved cyanide as well. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. Hey, Dave.
Yes, sir.
Don't drink the Kool-Aid, brother.
Oh, man.
Whatever you do, yeah, don't do it. I've often heard people refer or use that term, and I think that I don't think that people. I'm going to go down a path here, so just bear with me. I don't think people actually understand the depth and breadth of what happened in Jonestown, and just let me tell you a quick story. I actually talked to a guy many years ago that I worked with that was an old pathologist, and he has passed on. And he went down there. He went down there in the wake of this event. We're talking about 900 dead, Dave. And when he got there, where Jonestown was located in Guyana, I think is that
Guyana.
Guyana. The jungle that surrounded the area was so dense, there's not a lot of roads coming in. So they had to bring him in helos, and he came in a what would have been a Huey, an old Huey. You remember the old Vietnam helicopters that you see every time you hear the song "Fortunate Son" played. You see a helo coming in, doors open. He actually told me, he said, we were almost 2 miles out and the doors on the helo were open. I could smell the decay. Now you're talking about a jungle environment and you're talking about 900 bodies, but just let that sink in just for a second. And that came about as a result of these people being poisoned. And we're talking about men, women, and children being poisoned with cyanide, and their death was horrible. I'd like to say that it was like really, really quick. You can't say that in every case. I think a lot of people think that it just happens, but it's still very, very brutal. And what the case is, I hate to say just singularly case because, I don't want to, devalue anybody's life here, because each one of these deaths associated with this cases, is an individual. But yeah, we're talking about a mass event with 6 people dead, Dave.
And actually adding "don't drink the Kool-Aid" or drinking the Kool-Aid as part of the lexicon. Interesting little sidebar of trivia. They didn't use Kool-Aid. They used a generic Kool-Aid called Flavor Aid, and Kool-Aid got mad. It's one of those little pieces of marketing information.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm,
what was it called again? Give me the
Flavor Aid. Flavor Aid is a knockoff of Kool-Aid. It's just a cheaper version, and that's what they used. But it's interesting that while Jim Jones had conditioned his followers to do this, they had mock trials before he conditioned them that people were coming, they were going to be wiped out, their children would be enslaved, and he would then serve them Kool-Aid that wasn't laced. Gave them plenty of time to go through these actions. I think it was 2 or 3 times they had these midnight calls where they would all gather and do this, and he would say, it was just a test.
Holy smokes, I never knew this.
Yeah, it was a faith test because he wanted to see what would happen if they truly did this. Would there be an uprising? Would people leave, or would they follow and do what he told them? Because you've got to remember very quickly, the reason this happened is Jim Jones and his group were in Northern California, and his church had become big. He was on the city council in San Francisco. He became a real player in town, but he was also a drug addict. And he had taken it to the next level in terms of swindling people out of their life savings and their homes and things like that. And his cult was flourishing, but people were watching, and they didn't like their family members getting caught up in his cult. So they started complaining to their local leaders. And so even though Jim Jones was giving money to a lot of people, they were investigating. And when he up and moved everybody to Guyana and carved out this, utopian society in the jungle, there were family members here that were really upset, and they went to their congressman, whose name was Leo Ryan. Leo Ryan then organized a trip with some news media, and they went down to Jonestown to find out what was really going on. While they were there, there's video of this. You can see it all. While he was there, he was given a little tour of things, and he saw there were some things that maybe weren't too good, but hey, the people seemed to be there voluntarily. But that night, before they went to sleep, Leo Ryan was given notes by people. They snuck notes to him saying, "Get me out of here, get me out of here." And so the next day, when they were loading up to go to the leave, congressman got a few of these people and they took them to the plane. But then at the aircraft, as they're getting on the plane, they were ambushed by some of Jones' henchmen. Congressman Leo Ryan and a news guy were both murdered right there on the tarmac in front of the plane, as well as a few others. And Jim Jones announced to his people, they're coming. The congressman's dead. The traitors are dead, and they will be coming for us now. Wow. We have no choice. That's how he got these people to follow through on what he had been conditioning them for in drinking the Kool-Aid, which wasn't even Kool-Aid. By the way, of all the people that died this very horrible way, there's audio tape of Jim Jones talking to them, and you hear the wails of mothers holding their children, people crying, "I don't want to die." It was horrible. But the one person who didn't take the Kool-Aid was Jim Jones. He shot himself in the head. Now, I encourage anyone, please, for the love, do a little research on Jim Jones and how he took a true belief and made it so wicked that over 900 people were following him in death.
I wonder, particularly as we talk about the topic at hand today, the idea that cyanide poisoning is a real thing that has occurred for quite a bit of time. You wonder, and this is kind of maybe a broad-ranging philosophical question. If that had not occurred, we've always known that cyanide is very toxic, obviously. But if that event in Jonestown had not occurred back then, how did that affect maybe the outcome in the case we're going to talk today, because people understand the lethality of it. And does it influence people, moving forward? How is it that I could take out a large number of people and be very stealthy about it? I don't think there was stealth necessarily involved in Jim Jones's case.
No, that was very direct. They knew what they were doing.
It was very direct. But if you wanted to facilitate something where there's not going to be any awareness, and that's the thing about poisoners, and I've always been fascinated by them in the sense that they want to fly under the radar to the point where they're not going to be detected on any level. And I think, you even look at like the infamous Tylenol poisonings, that occurred, years ago.
Wow.
All of those people that kind of slip things in just for a moment, they're not going to walk up and, if there's somebody they dislike and they're going to shoot them in the head. No,
Right.
This is, there's something that is so particularly evil about this, because you have to just keep in mind, in order to administer something like this, you have to be in somebody's very intimate personal space. You have to know that they have to ingest it in order for it to work, because if it's just sitting there, though it is dangerous, but if you can get them to ingest it, how much more lethal, and how are you going to facilitate them ingesting it? What's going to be the guarantee that this is going to actually happen? Dave, if you could just what actually
Joe,
yeah,
it's so amazing that you said that, because I'm thinking, all right, when you've got 6 people dead and they all know one another and they've all gathered in this very upscale hotel to discuss an investment, they have all, and I researched the hotel, because just because somebody says it's a ritzy hotel, well, that's all perspective. It's what is ritzy to you? It might not be the same for me. So I looked at the area of the hotel, what type. It's 5-star. This is top of the line. Okay. This is a nice place, an expensive place. So these are the type of investors, and there is some discussion right now of what they were investing in, but my belief is that it was in a hospital in Japan. We've got 2 American Vietnamese citizens and 4 that are Vietnamese. So we've got a group of people that know one another, are involved in a business venture, and maybe something's not quite going right. So that's how they all come together in this one place, in this ritzy hotel. And by the way, they had plans. See, at first people thought maybe it was a suicide, that they all voluntarily got together and decided, the Hale-Bopp comet's not coming by, let's go ahead and do it. They didn't have a dough to follow. But in this case, police believe that they were there to get some answers about their finance. And they had plans. They had plans for the following day. They were going to be hitting the big expensive spots. They had stuff going on. So it wasn't like they all went there to die. So take the suicide off the table.
Yeah. You have to, Howard, you cannot completely dismiss the idea of suicide. But if it was an individual, okay.
Right.
But when you have a group of people, what would be the motivation, for us to all gather together in one accord and simultaneously take our life? You're right. I think that they would abandon that premise pretty quickly. And but you still have to keep that in the back of your mind. And also, if there is a perpetrator, a single perpetrator that is responsible for this action, was their intent to be suicide? So does this turn into a murder-suicide investigation at this point in time? And
is it just a murder?
Or is it just a murder?
Because you're right.
Yeah.
What if it was a planned murder? I'm going to kill my partners in this. I'm taking over the whole thing. And the murderer accidentally drank from the wrong cup. Because what we have here, the delivery method for the cyanide, which I don't, Joe, really know what cyanide is. I don't know what it looks like or if it has a smell. I don't know how one gets it into a drink without anybody knowing. I don't know any of that, and I'm hoping you can shed light on it, because at this point, we got 6 people dead, and we know it's cyanide because that's what we've been told by police. But I don't even know how you would find that out. You walk into a room, there's 6 dead people, and you're looking at food on the table that's still wrapped like it was delivered, but you can tell they've all had a toast of some type. They've had something to drink. How do you find out what happened? How do you test?
Well, I can tell you this. From Jump Street, if you're a death investigator or a forensic scientist and you walk in to a room with 6 dead bodies and there are no spent casings on the ground, you better tread carefully because there might be something in there that might take your life as well.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Ilya Malinin.
Redefining this sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Brother Dave, I got a question for you, man. If you were given a selection between peanuts, pecans, I say pecans, not pecans. My granny used to say pecans, something you keep under the bed. Walnuts and, I don't know, filberts. I don't know. They go on, and almonds. Out of that complete selection, what would you choose? Walnuts, really?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like walnuts.
I don't know. I mean,
I really.
Yeah, I like eating nuts. I buy the mixed nuts, when I'm buying them, or Yeah.
Walnuts.
Walnuts.
Well, let me ask you something. Have you ever smelled?
I feel like you're going to do an airplane.
There's no
Really?
joke coming
Have you
up
ever
here.
seen
I got to ask you though. Have
Okay.
you ever smelled? Well, some people will say that there's an association between smelling burnt toast and having a stroke. I don't know if that's valid or not. Yeah. Some people will say that. But did you know that there's something associated with cyanide poisoning that is a particular smell?
No.
That only 40% of us can actually smell. And that is that's cyanide. Cyanide actually gives off the smell of toasted or burnt almonds. And it's kind of weird, isn't it? And so when you think about another quick aside, I think during the course of my career, I think maybe I handled 3 cyanide-related deaths over that period of time. By the way, I was terrified by them, of being in the presence of the substance, or allegedly present in the substance, in the presence of the substance. And I assisted in 2 of the autopsies and was present for another one. Did you know I could not smell the smell, but other people in the room could smell the smell? And so for me, really? Only 40. They claim that only 40% of the population can actually smell the smell of burnt almonds, as it's associated with cyanide. I'm not saying that I couldn't take almonds, put them in a frying pan, and scorch them, and I would be able to smell that. But this idea that you can pick up on the smell, some people say that you can. So I've always been fascinated by that. But that is associated with cyanide poisoning, something that you can actually pick up on. And I really wonder, going back to this fine hotel in Thailand, if the investigators actually walked in, can you imagine? You walk in to this room. Now, these people have not been seen. They did not check out when they were supposed to.
Right. And by the way, Joe, for you or me, when we're in a hotel and the checkout time comes, for me, it's 5 minutes after checkout time. They're at the door going, "Are you still here? Why are you still here?" But when you're rich, it's a little different. You stay in a hotel. They were there an extra day. Okay, they gave these people an entire day beyond when they were supposed to check out. That's you want a telling difference between the rich and the rest of us? They got an extra day before the cleaning person even
I've
checked
got people knocking on my door all the time. When we were leaving CromCon in Nashville, I had them. They were banging on my door, and we had brought so much stuff with us, and we had it all piled in our room. But the idea that, and again, this goes to timeline from an investigative standpoint. How long had these people been down? when they're discovered in this hotel room, and what's the status once they're all fine. One of the things that's always amazed me with a mass death event is not that as an investigator I'm present amongst the dead. That's a known, that's a given, that's what you sign on for. I'm always amazed by the people that are the finders, that you're the person that has the pass key, Dave. Just for a second, consider this. You're the person with the pass key that gets into the room. Now, in this case, I think the door was actually locked from the inside, which is quite telling. But let's just say you're the person that has to put your shoulder to the door, if you will, or take the pry bar and crack that thing open. You imagine? Just as the door begins to open up, you suddenly realize that in a hotel room, let's just think about a hotel room. We know how big it is. We know that there are, we've got kind of a semi-living area. We've got a bed area. We've got a bathroom. If it's a suite, you might have it kind of divided off. You might have a dining area. There was a bedroom. You've got 6 dead people. What in the world do you make of it? Because I got to tell you, at a primal level, I was not saying that passively just a moment ago, where you can walk into this environment and not have that indwelling fear. Did you know that when we do autopsies on burn victims, okay, that die in house fires, did you know that cyanide shows up in their tox reports? Because it's a component. It's a component of some manufactured furnitures that are out there, and appointments, carpets, that sort of thing. And so when we do what's referred to in when we're doing deaths related to fires, we do what's called a carboxyhemoglobin level, and that gives you an idea of how much carbon monoxide that the individual's taken on. That means that they were breathing during the time of the fire. But one of the little side elements that you find many times are these toxic substances. So one of them will be cyanide. And I'll when at Jack State, when I'm teaching my classes, particularly when it comes to fire-related deaths and fire investigations, I'll tap on these plastic tables, these laminated tables, and tell them, everything in here, these components that you see around you, if this stuff goes up in flame and you're adjacent to it, you're going to be taking on these elements because they're essentially vaporized at that point in time. And so cyanide is something that is around us. It's around us at all times. It's just not in concentrated levels where we're going to take it on and we're going to die from it, or it hasn't been unleashed as a result of interaction with heat and that sort of thing. But we've always known that it's lethal. Hey, listen, for years and years, Dave, people states that utilize the gas chamber, cyanide, was the chosen methodology. The Nazis used cyanide. Okay.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, Joe, because in a lot of movies, I'm thinking actually, Captain America, when they did the boot on that back 10, 15 years ago, and when he first becomes Captain America and he chases the Nazi out of the room, and he pulls the Nazi out of the jet plane that is actually underwater, and he throws him up on the shore, and he says, take one of us out, two will replace us. And the guy pops the tooth and chomps down on the cyanide capsule and dies. That's why I was curious about how long it takes to take effect. Are there different levels of the cyanide? And the other thing, Joe, until you mentioned it, it didn't occur to me the fear that would strike in the hearts of man to open a door, find 6 people dead, and there's no bloodshot. There's no gun. There's no knife. They're just laying there dead. And they're not all like sitting around a table doing a seance and died. They died where one person had almost made it to the door. Another person was on the way towards the door. 2 were near the table area, and there were 2 in the bedroom. So you've got 6 people spread out, dead, but no signs of being beaten. There's no signs of a struggle, no signs of a fight. I mean, you've got 6 dead people, and you can't tell anything about it. It didn't occur to me the fear that would hit somebody going,
Yeah.
I could die in here now. What if it's a leak of some kind?
Yeah, and
Shut
it's
the door, let's
terrifying
go.
for investigators when you go out on cases like this. I may have mentioned this before, but, I had a family of 6 or 7 that died in a home where this brain surgeon of an uncle came over to fix the wall heater, and he reversed the fan on the thing, and it got cold, and the exhaust fan ran backwards essentially, and it blew carbon monoxide into the home. And so as we were working this case, and to give you an idea of the level of danger, and this is not cyanide, this is carbon monoxide.
Right.
I had to go to the hospital. I was in the hospital for eight hours, I think, on oxygen. My head was pounding, my eyes were bloodshot, and 2 of my colleagues were in there. And this is after the fire department had come out and said, they use the big fans to kind of ventilate the area where they, that they use, and it had not been sufficiently ventilated. So anytime you walk into an environment, you can't, as an investigator, think that you're safe. I actually had a friend of mine that walked into a suicide with a fellow that had shot himself with a pistol. In the suicide, the room he had booby trapped. He'd actually booby trapped with a deer rifle, and if the string that was attached to the trigger housing had not been discovered, anybody bending over the body and manipulating a door that was immediately could have been shot through the chest with this deer rifle. So yeah, it is evil. And, we talk about, with explosives, we talk about secondary devices and all, where they draw you in. And then, so my thought is this: anybody that's willing to take either their life or somebody else's life, your life as an investigator has no value to them whatsoever. And that has to, and as cynical as that is, that has to be your worldview, because my goal at the end of the day is to be able to go home to my family and my kids and all that sort of thing. You're there as an investigator, but you're in an environment where life has just ended. So with that said, when we're thinking about how do you get this substance, first off, how do you acquire it? Well, it's acquired through a variety of methodologies and means. Yeah.
But hey, let me ask you, Joe, just very quick. All right, you've got 6 bodies in this hotel suite. You see that there is food on the table that's still wrapped. Yes. It hasn't been eaten. You can see that drinks have been consumed, but the people are in different areas. Where does the investigation begin? Because I have to assume, and I don't think I'm incorrect in the assumption that you're going to be calling, if you're a cop, you're calling in the detectives and the medical examiner. You've got to have somebody in there that knows how people die, how they live, and know what could have possibly caused this to happen before you move a body, right?
Yeah, you do. And you'll get certain indicators at the scene as to what you might be dealing with when you look at the bodies, because the bodies take on a certain appearance after death. All right, when they're exposed to cyanide, we're thinking about interestingly enough, a condition called cyanosis, for instance, which is kind of a purplish hue. We see that. It doesn't mean it's.
You're going to see that.
You'll actually see this kind of purplish hue that will, and the nail beds, you want to look at that. But some of that stuff can be confused with decomposition. And we're talking about people that should have been checked out of the room 24 hours beforehand. So is what you're seeing related to decompositional changes, or is this actually a presentation as a result of being exposed to cyanide? So you have to do that in your calculus as well. I don't know. I think that, and here's the problem. First off, you don't know what the agent is. You don't know if it is an agent to begin with. If this was an accidental event, we I don't know if you recall this, but a couple of years ago we had these scares down in the Caribbean where these people were dying on vacation. I think they even did a TV series about it. But it was stuff that was coming in through the ventilation system in hotels and whatnot. but when you don't necessarily have a source for this, everything should be considered. So yeah, the ME would definitely need to be at the scene. They would need to take great care as to what the way they were handling things. I think one of my biggest concerns would be is if you're dealing with a substance like arsenic. If you're not wearing gloves, for instance, is it transdermal? Is it something you're going to absorb? Is there any chance that that as a result of manipulating the bodies or handling the bodies, you're going to run afoul of anything else that's in there, because you don't know what's in these hidden spaces. So
You mentioned arsenic. Is arsenic and cyanide, are they the same thing?
No, they're not. They're two separate things. Arsenic is actually a heavy metal, and cyanide, of course, is not. It's a compound, and so you've got two separate things that you're dealing with here, but they have a certain level of lethality. You even look at things like strychnine poisoning. We've heard that for years and years. There are certain religious cults, denominations out there that would in the past actually drink strychnine to prove their faith, these sorts of things. So you have a variety of different things that are out there that have a level of lethality to them. Cyanide, though, is detectable. It's not something that it's not something that is stealthy in the sense that the toxicology is not going to reveal that it was there and that it's what led to the death. The other piece to this is that with these folks in the hotel room, each one of their autopsies, you're going to see physical manifestations of, presenting on their body. Here's what you can't get past. As you're taking this in, and I think that at this point, at least, we believe that this may have ingested as a result of it was transmitted to them, perhaps through a drink of tea. You would not only want to pull the tox on them and examine whatever is going on systemically in their circulatory system, but also those cups are going to be essential as well. If there's any residue that's left behind, what was the level of dosage that was applied to them? How pure was this substance? Because once it hits and gets into the system, it's almost impossible to reverse this circumstance. It's almost, you're in an irrecoverable flat spin at this point in time.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Ilya Malinin.
Redefining this sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
One of the most telling pieces to these cases is, and I think something that is quite chilling, is the fact that the chief of police for the Bangkok Police Department, and by the way, they were refusing to release the names at this point in time in regards to this event. The chief of police stated that when they entered this hotel room, Dave, that it appeared that two of the individuals had tried to make it to the door. So they know, this is what's so chilling about it, they know that there's something going on. And that also gives you an indication of positionality of the bodies at the scene. If the chief of police is actually coming, and we're not talking about any small place here, we're talking about Bangkok, arguably,
right.
I don't know where it stacks up. It's one of the largest cities in the world, I think. Right. When this person is coming out and saying that it looks like they're trying to get to the door, that means that positionality, directionality, they're laying as if they're trying to make it to the door to try to get help. but that's how quickly cyanide can actually work, that they couldn't even go to, because just think how the dynamic of all this would have changed if they had made it to the door, if they had just cracked the door, unlocked the door, and gotten out and maybe had died in the hallway. We'd be looking at something completely different here, but this was still all self-contained. They didn't even have the energy or the ability to actuate the door lock to get out, but they feel as though that they were trying to escape, maybe trying to get to help. How hopeless is this, Dave?
Population in Bangkok is 9 million. So you're talking pretty much New York City type. That's how big of a city this is. And they do know what they're doing. But the police have been very careful. And I'm glad you've mentioned this a couple of times, Joe, because when we're reporting on cases, we like to identify the victims. I don't like to give them a number or group them all together because it seems disrespectful. And I think about if somebody's listening right this minute and knows somebody who passed like that, I don't want you to think we're being that way. They just are choosing to not release the information at this time. But what we do know, because even most of the press is not even indicating the gender of the individual that they suspect for doing this. As I mentioned earlier, they do suspect that one person here committed murder and then suicide. But Joe, when you talked about they were going towards the door.
Yeah.
All I could think of in my head, because I don't know how this works, but how long does it take for cyanide to kill somebody, first of all? But I'm just a regular Joe Schmo here. And I have to wonder, if I started researching something like cyanide, how to acquire it, how to use it, it seems like something would pop up on the internet security stuff somewhere, that somebody would know that I was searching for this stuff. And that they would connect the dots and go, you can't do that, Dave.
My colleagues at the university, we will quip over this every now and then, and we'll say, if people could see the stuff that, particularly in forensics,
right,
that you're sourcing,
that you're looking for.
You were thinking, oh my God, they're thinking we're plotting some kind of dastardly event.
Well, Joe, if you and I talk about canoes and going down the little creek, all of a sudden on social media, on Facebook, I'm going to see ads for canoes.
Yeah, you're right.
So tell me they're not listening.
Well, the thing about it is with cyanide, I think one of the big questions is, well, how would you go about procuring cyanide? What's the utility of it? So, and that's where the police have to start, because you have to understand the sourcing of this very highly toxic compound. I mean, it has such a level of lethality to it. And you have to take great care when it's being utilized. But let's say, for instance, it's used in metallurgical pursuits, for instance. Mm-hmm. You have people that are doing jewelry that this actually requires an application of a use of cyanide. And actually, there's certain, like, there's a color that if you're doing like working with bronze, for mm-hmm. instance, there's a color that cyanide will bring out in bronze when you're crafting it, for instance.
Wow.
It's been used there. And of course, cyanide's been used for a long time just for poisoning. And I'm not talking about like homicidal poisoning. I'm talking about if you're trying to get rid of, I know that it's been applied for, let's see, what was it? It's been applied for coyotes to get rid of them. I think even in Australia, people don't realize that possums are not indigenous to Australia, and the Aussies use it, I believe, to eradicate possum population down there. So, and it has a lot of utility, and has had for a lot of, over the years.
So you could have a legitimate reason to get cyanide without it raising attention.
Yeah. And so I would want to try to source that to anybody that was working Jason, my first stop is probably going to be anybody that's involved with jewelry, period. Because how can you justify the acquisition of it? Or did you go to the black market and pick it up?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what their abilities are to
Is it
acquire
something like fentanyl? You know, we've heard about how deadly fentanyl is recently, and now it's they've told us that simply touching it, absorbing through the skin, it can be deadly. It can cause a lot of problems. Is cyanide the same way?
You know, Dave, I'd have to say if we were going to compare fentanyl and cyanide, one of the big differences here is that fentanyl, believe it or not, actually has a therapeutic use, and it has. I mean, for years and years, it's a precursor for, things like I don't know, for anesthesia, those sorts of things. We even had fentanyl patches. There is no kind of, I'm sure I'll get some pushback on this, but there is no medicinal use for cyanide per se.
Right.
It's something that's used in industry. So with the Thai police, as they're conducting this investigation, they're going to have to consider, first off, how this person, and we believe that it's one of the females that is involved in this, that facilitated this allegedly. At this point in time, it would seem that way. One of the females that was deceased inside of the room. How did she source this stuff? Because I got to tell you, Dave, that if in fact she got this from somebody, I'm going to take a long, hard look at the source during the course of this investigation, and they might run the risk in this particular case as, being maybe part and parcel of this event. And you can't, merely just, raise your shoulders and say, well, I didn't know that this was what she was going to use it for. We're going to have a talk, with that person. And so I think that that's something that has to be considered here as well. Was there somebody else that may have been involved in this, particularly when it comes, because this is not something like you're going to go down to the Ace Hardware and say, hey, yeah, let me get a pound of cyanide.
Right.
So it has a very specific point of origin here, I think. And that's certainly something that's going to have to be looked at, Dave.
If somebody mixed cyanide in with my coffee and I drank it, what would be the first sign that something was wrong? Would I have a headache? Would I start sweating? What would go through physiologically with me to know something bad just happened?
Yeah. First off, let's don't use personal pronouns with you. I value you too much. Let's just say, let's just
if you were going to kill me with cyanide,
let's just say very broadly, okay. If somebody, all right, I don't want to be involved in that conversation, but some of the things that you're going to look for, that an individual would have an indication, and this is something that's quite fascinating to me because you've got kind of a group dynamic, Dave. Can you imagine being seated at the table?
Right.
That's
why
you're eyeballing one another all around the table, and all of a sudden you all start presenting with the symptoms. You're short of breath. Mm-hmm. You've got a rapid heartbeat. You might begin to seize as well, because seizures are one of the things that's associated with, and it's going to impact everybody at a different level. There's going to be like a malaise or a kind of a weakness. You can have dizziness. 3, 2. You can have dizziness. So if they try to stand up and ambulate in any way, they might begin to sway left, right. There's vertigo, all kinds of things. And of course, there's confusion. And isn't that horrible to think about it with all of these people, and we're saying this group dynamic of 6 people in the room, and all of a sudden the room starts to spin. They're disoriented until finally unconsciousness hits. Now, understand that with exposure to the cyanide, this is happening at a cellular level, where literally cellular respiration begins to cease, and it starts off in that tiny little context like that, and it extends out. So that's why you would begin to get these kind of progressive symptoms that are presenting.
One thing I did look at, it said their lips were purple, and that was one of the signs. But I was thinking, what if are there other signs? I mean, does your face become red? As you and I are sitting here, do you go, hey, Dave, you're like turning into the little girl that gets the blueberries in Willy Wonka?
Cyanosis.
Okay.
Nail beds are something that we look at very
Is that
commonly.
going to happen fast?
Pretty quickly. And the body is essentially, and I don't mean this in a literal term of being strangled. Your ability to uptake oxygen is being strangulated in the sense that you're turning this purple color, cyanotic. Lips will turn purple. The gum line will actually turn purple. You'll see this presentation, and it as an investigator, one of the things that always troubled me, that was even more offensive than dealing with decomposed bodies, were cyanotic bodies. And many times you'll get cyanotic. You'll have people that are cyanotic that are having a heart event as well. And again, oxygen is not being processed in the body. So we look from what's called the nipple line up. You'll see this kind of eggplant color that will come on people. And for me as an investigator, it was always like, it was really striking to me. You'd mentioned Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
My daughter's a blueberry, right. that sort of thing. And you get that color, and that's I'm talking about the original, the real right. Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
That her presentation in that movie, if you're wondering what cyanosis looks like, that's kind of how it looks.
Wow.
And so, you would get that presentation. And again, that adds another level of horror to this. Can you imagine you're sitting around the table, you're having difficulty breathing, and then if you're able to process this visually, you see your friends sitting at the table, they're clutching their throat, they're gasping for breath, and you're all turning purple.
Yeah.
Just think of the horror of that. I don't know that you can actually measure that in any way, Dave. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.